His story began in a small city in South Georgia. The newest chapter is a nomination to command the entire U.S. military. President-elect Joe Biden has chosen retired four-star Army General Lloyd Austin to serve as Defense Secretary.
I recognize that being a member of the President's cabinet requires a different perspective and unique responsibilities from a career in uniform.
If confirmed by the Senate, Austin would be the first black Secretary of Defense in the history of the U.S. Austin is from Thomasville near the Georgia-Florida line, about 18,000 people in that city. We spoke to his high school football coach this afternoon.
He's accustomed to responsibility. He's accustomed to big jobs, and his intellect and his experiences will serve us well and serve the country well as the Secretary of Defense.
You can hear more from Coach Hughes tonight on Up Late at 11.